Good evening, I'm Ed Lingao, sitting in for Ces Oreña-Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The big stories tonight, no less than President Bongbong Marcos announces that warrants of arrest are out for former Congressman Zaldico and several others over the flood control scandal.
We also have news on two women linked to POGOs. Alice Guo is fighting to stay at the Pasig City Jail, while Cassandra Leong is on the run, dodging arrest.
And this man is also being linked to illegal offshore gaming. Former presidential spokesman Harry Roque, whose passport, as one senator says, will be canceled anytime soon.
Speaker siya, si Congressman Zaldico, Committee on Appropriations Chairman. Dun sa relationship na yon, no, nangyari itong mga iba't ibang kontratang ito.
Warrant na ito, aarestuhin na sila, ihaharap sa korte at pananagutin sa batas. Ako ang nagsimula nitong lahat. Ako ang magtatapos.
President Bongbong Marcos made two important announcements on the progress of the flood control scandal investigations. This afternoon, he says warrants of arrest have been issued against Zaldico and 17 others. This is in connection with the alleged anomalous 289 million peso flood control project in Oriental Mindoro, which the Ombudsman filed before the Sandigan Bayan last Tuesday. Ko and his co-accused are facing charges of corruption and malversation of public funds. The President orders the warrants to be enforced immediately with a note that no special treatment will be accorded to the accused.
Nais kong i-report na ang Ombudsman formal nang naghain ng kaso laban kina Zaldico at iba pang 17 individual batay sa mga ebidensyang iniakyat ng ICI at saka ng DPWH. Hindi po ito haka-haka, hindi po ito kwento. Ito po ay tunay na ebidensya. At ito po, para hindi ko na babasahin, pero makikita naman ninyo sa phone ninyo, ito yung listahan ng may arrest warrant na. At ang susunod na hakbang, ay wala nang paligoy-ligoy pa, ang ating mga otoridad ay siyempre papatupad na nila itong mga arrest warrant na ito. Aarestuhin na sila, ihaharap sa korte at pananagutin sa batas. Walang special na pagtrato, walang sinasanto. Ako ang nagsimula nitong lahat. Ako ang magtatapos. Kaya't asahan po ninyo na wala pong tigil itong aming ginagawa. At kahit na parang napakatagal ang dumaan na panahon, ako'y nagpapasalamat sa pasensya ng ating mga kababayan. Ngunit nagbunga na ng resulta ang mga pasensya ninyo.
Before this, Marcos also announced that Ko and his cousin, former Speaker Romualdez, will now be the subject of a formal investigation by the Ombudsman. Recall that Ko tagged the president in a 100 billion peso insertion in the 2025 budget alongside Romualdez. Here's the president's statement this morning.
Kagaya ng aking nasabi nung nakaraang report ko, ay patuloy ang pagre-report ko sa taong bayan tungkol sa mga kaso at saka sa mga impormasyon na nakukuha natin tungkol sa mga flood control project na hindi maganda. At kaya ngayon ay nais kong ipalaman sa ating mga kababayan na ang ICI at saka ang DPWH ay lahat ng nakuha nila na impormasyon ay ire-refer, ibibigay na sa Ombudsman para imbestigahan ng Ombudsman. Ito ay tungkol sa mga impormasyon ng dating Speaker Martin Romualdez at saka ni Zaldico. Pag nakita lahat ng ebidensya, baka mag-file ng kaso ng plunder o anti-graft o indirect bribery. Malakas naman ang loob natin na yung Ombudsman ang ginagawa lamang ay sumusunod sa ebidensya. At kung saan tayo dinadala ng ebidensya, doon pupunta ang ating investigasyon.
Meantime, the Ombudsman welcomes the issuance of arrest warrants against Zaldico and his co-accused. The Ombudsman echoed the President's order to law enforcement agencies to make the arrests and bring the accused to justice. Earlier this week, the Ombudsman said it will seek the assistance of Interpol or the International Criminal Police Organization to track Ko.
And as the president earlier announced, the Public Works Department and the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, ICI, did recommend charges of plunder, graft, and bribery against CO and former House Speaker Martin Romualdez. However, at the onset, the Office of the Ombudsman expressed some reservations on one basis used by the ICI and DPWH. News 5's JC Cosico with the report.
Friday, November 21, officials from the Department of Public Works and Highways and the Independent Commission for Infrastructure brought these boxes to the Office of the Ombudsman. In them are evidence which the DPWH and ICI believe are solid enough to charge for plunder, graft, and direct bribery. Later, Representative Martin Romualdez and resigned Ako Bicol Party List Representative Zaldico. The documents include 100 billion pesos worth of government contracts between 2016 and 2025, backed by SunWest and High Tone Construction, two companies linked to CO. For Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon, the connection between CO and Romualdez is simply undeniable at this point.
Speaker Martin Romualdez, siya ang naging speaker from 2022 to 2025. Si former Congressman Zaldico ang napili na Committee on Appropriations Chairman. At ang sinasabi ng referral na to ay dun sa relationship na yon, no, nangyari itong mga iba't ibang kontratang ito. Facts lang lahat ito.
Dizon also pointed as reference Orly Gutez's sworn affidavit before the Senate's Blue Ribbon Committee. Recalled that the former Marine Sergeant claimed to have worked for Zaldico as security consultant, delivering luggages of what he called basura or kickback money to his then boss and Romualdez. But Ombudsman Boying Remulla doubts Gutez's testimony will hold water if he refuses to come forward and fill in the gaps.
Hindi namin pwedeng gamitin yun kung hindi niya haharapan na sasabihin na itong affidavit na to, akin talaga to, at ako mismo nag-prepare niyan, personal knowledge ko lang yari dyan. Ganun yan eh. Hindi nga, that's still not an authorized statement, has no value unless sumarap yung tao para manumpa ulit.
Prior to this, Remulla said that Romualdez had called him up to insist that he has nothing to do with the flood control scandal, something that investigators are not buying.
Hindi pwedeng maghugas kamay ang mga public officials. Bakit? Walang pumilit sa kanila. Kaya tanggapin nila yung obligasyon. Tanggapin nila na kailangan silang sumunod sa mga batas.
Washing his hands off kickbacks through video statements is also not going to cut it for CO.
Umuwi na siya.
Nakadalawang imbitasyon
Umuwi
na
na
sa
siya.
kanya.
As for Romualdez, Remulla sees cases against the former speaker in the next 6 to 9 months. But a graver charge could be out of the question.
We are rethinking our options always when we file plunder charges because no one ever gets convicted of plunder. And some of these theories are just insane. When you look at the jurisprudence, the easier one to prove will be malversation.
On Tuesday, November 18, the first cases to be filed over the flood control mess were filed. These were against CO, his firm SunWest, and public works officials in Mimaropa over an anomalous flood control project in Nauhan Oriental, Mindoro. The DPWH and ICI said more cases will be recommended soon, in line with their promise to put in jail main players in the scandal before Christmas.
Again, umpisa pa lang po ito. Magamang po sa mga araw na lang po ang bibigangin natin at lalabas na ang unang mga warrants of arrest.
Mananagot ang kurakot.
For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
Let's discuss these developments with our first guest tonight, co-convener of Tindig Pilipinas, Dr. Silvia Claudio. Ma'am, magandang gabi po and welcome to the Big Story.
You might be on mute, ma'am.
Ma'am, I'm afraid we can't hear you. You might still be on mute.
There I go.
There you go. Yes, ma'am. Now we can hear you. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Okay. Ma'am, well, announcements of warrant of arrest against Zaldico and the likelihood of charges against the president's cousin. Clearly, the president is making a pitch to the public that, number one, he has nothing to do with the scandal, and number two, that he is doing something about it. My question to you is this, does this change anything as far as Tindig Pilipinas is concerned?
It doesn't, in the sense that we need to see those arrests made, and we really hope to see the beginning of conviction soon. Although we are happy with the development nonetheless, we want to be a little harsh these days and say all these developments are because people continue to be angry.
But are they angry enough? And also, how far do you want people to be angry? Because there's also, I'm sure you've heard about all the talk about people wanting to go beyond what's in the Constitution.
Yes, we want them to be angry in the sense that all these gains and continuing gains are happening because we're watchful and we're holding them accountable, but within the bounds of the Constitution. I am speaking for both Tindig Pilipinas, and we are also one of the organizing groups of the billion peso march.
The Billion Peso March, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Dr. Claudio, with regard to the president making strong words against his own cousin, former Speaker Martin Romualdez, what do you think? Do you think that the cases are strong enough to hold, because we cannot find Orly Guteza right now? There's also talk of him recanting a statement, if Mike Defensor is to be believed. And the other one who made the connection between the president, or even Martin Romualdez, to these cases is also Zaldico, who we can't yet compel to come back home.
Yes, we're hoping that what the ICI was able to accomplish, and this is why we are a bit disappointed with it being not as transparent as we had hoped, is that there is now a template for how to investigate and bring cases against these people. Because these are not only about the witnesses we saw in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, this is also a lot of paper trail that we saw earlier in your news clip, kahon-kahon, yung ebidensya, and we hope that that is strong evidence as well. With regards to the allegations of Zaldico, we are calling for Zaldico to come back, present himself, and we are asking the president to recuse himself from these proceedings where he is involved, and also though to ensure that Zaldico is not harmed when he comes back.
And ma'am, for the longest time, I mean, the call of the public was accountability, right? And that dapat makasuhan na ang mga responsable dito sa maanumalyang flood control projects. But now that there are arrest warrants and cases already filed, you have the Ombudsman saying he's going to file cases that are airtight and really secure. You also have the president already announcing these arrest warrants. How would you assess the political will of this government right now?
I would assess the political will of all our unfortunately decaying institutions as having political will as long as we are watching, as long as we are demanding, as long as we are holding them accountable. So now I think it's pretty good, but I also hope that we continue to give them that political will. Unfortunately, if we don't light a fire under them, they tend to lapse into passivity or even worse, but I won't say what worse is.
Okay, let me add to Paui's question then. As to the sincerity of that political will, as it seems to be with the press releases and the statements, are you buying it?
We're buying it as we see it. And therefore, we're happy to see those warrants of arrest. We would be very happy to see the evidence come out, and we would of course be very happy to see convictions. What we're not yet too happy about is my understanding, according to the lawyers in our group, is confiscation of property should be really easy for the government. Lalo na they already have the SALN of many of these people. So we're hoping to see sooner than just the cases already the confiscation of the wealth that is not in line with the SALN and the assets of our government officials.
With regard to that SALN, Dr. Claudio, it would seem to me, at least as a layperson who also files taxes, you can kind of take a lot of carte blanche with how you fill in that form that is required by the Civil Service Commission. Are you guys thinking of making a call to make a more, I don't know, ironclad, more truthful, and more fair assessment in terms of declarations on the SALN? Because what BBM did was he also released another version by a third-party assessor.
The Cuervo assessors.
Yes.
And you're looking at almost £1 billion in variance between the Cuervo assessment and the President's SALN. That's a huge amount.
Yes, I'd be very happy to see that. But at first, what happened in the previous administration of former President Duterte is they even made that process more opaque by using to show their SALN. If I may get a little personal, I've been a government employee for decades before my retirement from UP, and we really seriously filed our SALNs. And as an official, I could see the SALNs of those people I was supervising. That's really a worthless thing for us in the lower ranks of government, but we are the ones that are forced to be transparent, no? So if they want to say we can, my group and those of us who have worked in government, we can give them some suggestions because they can save on a lot of paper by just saying that those of us with a certain lower level of position can be less thorough, and those independent assessments from outside sources can be required for our higher officials who really need to be held more accountable.
Ma'am, let me follow up on that SALN issue. I have noticed a bit of a trend among, well, at least for the senators. Sa SALN po nila, I noticed na pag inherited yung property, they do not include the assessment or the fair market value doon sa computation nila ng asset. Which strange, I myself find it strange kasi in the end, even if it's inherited, it is now that person's asset. I cite, for example, the case of the SALN of Ces Escudero. He is apparently the poorest declared SALN in the Senate kasi puro inherited daw yung kanya mga property. So walang value ang nilagay.
Walang peso value.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't realize that would be applied, no? Because when we were given our instructions, when I myself was doing my SALN, my small inheritance from my father was always declared.
There you go.
So it really is one set of justice for us in the lower ranks of government, including yung kahigpitan ng COA sa amin, no? And another set of justice for those who are in the higher ranks of government. So we can really tighten that one more because we really should declare all our assets. Hopefully, that is protective if you tell the truth. Because as someone who started very young in government, I could see, of course, my net worth increase because, that should happen as you grow older.
Yeah, it should.
So, it's also a protection if you're an honest person. Because then the government can't say, oh, why are you rich suddenly now? Because you can track the increase in wealth. So it isn't just how much I have now, is it in line with my salary now, but also how my lifestyle gets better because it's cumulative.
Yes, ma'am. It should be seen as time series data across the years.
Yeah.
You can see the trend.
Yeah.
Ma'am, balik ako dun sa flood control, if I may. Of course, we saw the video statements made by Zaldico, tatlo na sila, or apat na ba? Anyway, you've had already several, implicating, among others, of course, President Bongbong Marcos. But at the same time, earlier this week, si Senator Ping Lacson through... former USEC Bernardo through Ping Lacson basically said na the buck stops with the Bersamins and the Olaybar and the Amena Pangandaman and hindi raw umaabot yung liability or accountability kay Pangulong Marcos. I'm wondering lang if that to you is acceptable or if there's more to you that meets the eye.
Well, it depends on two things, no? How transparent we are, and as I've mentioned, until we actually see the evidence, because yung sinabi ni Saldico is video evidence. We cannot put too much yet on that until he comes with something clearer.
Apo.
And in the statement of Senator Lacson, although I don't think he's a lying person, we also don't know that. That's just a statement. So we are really calling on government in this process. Let's be transparent. When the cases are being held, we want a nationally televised, open set of trials so the people themselves can look at the evidence and that judge that evidence as well. Finally, aside from talking about how transparent is transparent, we also want to know how accountable is accountable because the president signed the budget.
Opo.
Right.
That is a different level of accountability, but nonetheless, that is, I think, he has to be held accountable for that ayuda budget.
Kumbaga, last touch.
Oh, at saka kumbaga, at the very least, best case scenario for him, it's negligence, di ba? He could just say, hindi ko alam na nagyari ito. But as Ed always says, that's also not good.
Yes.
Right? So,
Kasi ma'am, hindi lang po sa bakura, nasa front yard niya, yung mga taong pinag-resign.
Opo. And alam niyo po, what we are also decrying is that when one scandal happens, we forget previous scandals and previous things we want to hold accountable. I'm also po a medical doctor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yung dinero budget po nila yung PhilHealth doon sa budget na yun, ha?
Opo. Yes,
So,
ma'am, I remember.
the transfer of so much money to what we believe was really for the ayuda funds, which were used for making themselves pretty during the election, that one should also not be forgotten. And there is also, if you don't mind my saying, my group Tindig Pilipinas, several of us filed the first impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte. So,
The December one.
again, yes. So what do we say when we mean holding people accountable? Sa Trillion Peso March movement po, we see November 30, our big rally, as just one of the milestones of what we're trying to do. We're talking about furthering that as a movement for bigger accountability and perhaps proposing laws that might have helped us reform our very badly managed political system.
So ma'am, with that said, what would be the primary call of the Trillion Peso March in your rally on November 30? And you are expecting about 500,000 people, that's a lot more than the turnout last September 21 where around 100,000 people came. So what can we expect on November 30? Sino-sino po ba yung mga grupong inaasahan nating sasali po?
Ay araw po yan ng labor natin, no? Traditionally, Andres Bonifacio Day po yan. Kaya yung first part ng ating program will be for our labor groups who have said they are really going to link their own calls on this accountability issue, no? These are workers who pay their taxes. Yung sinasabi nga nating lumalaban lang ng patas. So this is very upsetting also for our working men and women. And then we will have speeches from the organizers. We will have a video from Cardinal Ambo. The Catholic Church is also going all in on this one. We also have some evangelical groups, so there will be a mass after. And after the speeches, ang dami pong entertainers. So the program will stretch until the afternoon because we're really getting some big names who want to just come and sing. They're not asking for anything. They just also want to join the protest action. So what to expect, please come. And coming soon will be final announcements as to what to do, where to come, where to go. And before I end this rather long part of my talk, thank you for letting me talk. We're calling on people, of course, to watch their ranks, be sure that it will be a peaceful participation on your part. And we'll tell you little things like, please bring your garbage bag because we don't want the streets to be littered. And also lastly, for those people who will be inconvenienced by the traffic, we are already begging your indulgence po.
Okay. Ma'am, pahabol na lang po. Sorry pero pahabol na lang po. I'm wondering about your thoughts with regard to the revelations made by Amy Marcos on what turned out to be the last night ng Iglesia ni Cristo rally. Your thoughts po, or the thoughts of your colleagues in Tindig?
I'm sorry I sound a bit like I'm too pleased with my credentials, but I also have a PhD in Psikolohiya
Yes,
Filipino.
ma'am.
So, as someone who looks at our culture, ano po, I was really amazed because that's not a political speech as we knew it. That was more a soap opera speech. I wonder if someone from the entertainment industry wrote that speech rather than our usual script writer. And for a while, I was a bit worried that it might touch a vein. No, to be honest, we are afraid of the destabilization that you talked about earlier. And when the appeals are very emotional, and they reached the point where she was actually telling people that the president was no longer fit to lead.
Opo. Opo.
So that's a charge that was almost leading to, I don't know, some insurrection. I don't know what term, but it turns out po na I learned something about our Filipino values because we've been monitoring, as you have as well. It looks like Filipinos don't like it when we betray our family. So it might have been a nice letter to give to your brother if that was sincere, but it wasn't a great move to read it in front of 100,000 people in Luneta. So apparently it's not gaining too much traction. But, I like the tone. If you have any relative that is drug addicted, it's better than having them killed. The more enlightened way of doing it. Talk to their family and bring them to rehab.
Okay, ma'am. Very good to talk to you, ma'am. Tindig Pilipinas co-convener, Dr. Sylvia Claudio. Thank you po for joining us tonight.
Right, now in other news, a day after former Bamban Mayor Alice Guo was convicted over human trafficking charges, Cassandra Leong, who is also charged with the same case, is said to have slipped from detention and is now at large. Senator Win Gatchalian revealed during today's deliberations on the Justice Department's budget that Ong has been released from the Women's Correctional in Mandaluyong. Gatchalian said this happened during the transition between the 19th and 20th Congress. Senator Risa Ontiveros said she was surprised and alarmed by the information.
Na-detain ho siya sa House, and then because of the transition from the 19th Congress to the 20th Congress, pinalabas siya sa detention. At that point, wala pang kaso. No? So ngayon ho, mayroon ng kaso, the same, qualified human trafficking. Unfortunately, because nung nakalabas siya, tsaka lang na-filing kaso, at large siya ngayon. No?
Wow. So paano na po magiging katulad ba sa sitwasyon ng gobyerno kay Harry Roque na hindi present yung tao para humarap sa proseso? Paano pong mangyayari ngayon, Mr. Chair, kay Cassandra Leong?
Gatchalian said that a warrant of arrest for Ong has been issued and the DOJ has already begun the process of canceling Ong's passport. It can be recalled that Ong had attempted to flee the country at the height of the POGO investigations alongside Guo. Ong is one of the incorporators of the raided POGO firm Lucky South 99 in Porac, Pampanga. Meantime, expelled Bamban Tarlac Mayor Alice Guo has filed a motion to remain at the Pasig City Jail's female dormitory, delaying her transfer to the Correctional Institution for Women in Mandaluyong. The motion is scheduled for a hearing on November 26. Yesterday, a Pasig court sentenced Guo and 7 others to 20 to 40 years in prison for qualified human trafficking over POGO and scam hub operations.
We're just going to take a quick break, but coming up, the International Criminal Court is deciding on former President Rodrigo Duterte's bid for temporary freedom next week. The details on that next. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Here in the big story, the Appeals Chamber of the International Criminal Court, or the ICC, will deliver its ruling on former President Duterte's appeal for interim release next week. In a scheduling order dated November 20, presiding Judge Luz del Carmen Ibanez Carranza has set the decision for November 28 at 10:30 in the morning or 5:30 in the afternoon Manila time. The defense's bid challenges a September 26 pretrial chamber decision that denied Duterte's request for temporary freedom. The judgment will be issued under the Rome Statute and the ICC procedural rules, with notices circulated to the opposition, defense, and the counsel of Duterte's alleged victims. The former president has been detained in the Netherlands since March this year. Duterte is being accused of crimes against humanity over his administration's bloody war on drugs. And what a week it has been for the Philippines, particularly the flood control probe. Let's discuss this and all the legal issues today with Attorney Domingo Cayosa, the former president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines and a constitutional law expert. Good evening, sir, and welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, magandang gabi sa ating mga kababayan.
Sir, actually, hindi lang yung flood control gusto kong pag-usapan sa inyo. So if you don't mind, I'll broaden things a bit. All this talk of reset, I'm sure you've been hearing it around as well, reset, RevGov, and all that. All these are not contemplated in the Constitution of 1987. But when people talk about it and push these ideas, is there any liability there, any legal liabilities?
Well, if they just keep on talking without acting under talk, I don't see any legal liability. But you're correct. Reset, caretaker government, military, civilian junta has no place in the Constitution. As a matter of fact, if they act on that, it could be criminal in nature. There's a special law that punishes coup d'etat, because that's what they're about, coup d'etat, or the revised penal code punishes rebellion or insurrection.
As well, sir, sedition. You know, I forget what article it is in the revised penal code on sedition and inciting to sedition, which has been very generously used against all other groups from the left. But now apparently it's not so much used on groups from the right. So where do you draw the line? Where is the line drawn? When is it inciting to sedition, and when is it free speech? For example, sir, some people call for the resignations of officials, which I suppose is free speech. But when does it cross the line into something like inciting to sedition?
It becomes inciting to sedition if you call for agencies of government or for the people to rise up tumultuously. Using illegal means of violence. So that's the big difference. Itong resign, you leave it, the panawagan for resignation is part of free speech. And you leave it to the public concern whether or not he will follow your advice or your request or your demand. So ang laki ng diferensya. It is the call for people to rise up tumultuously to prevent government from doing its job or to dismember the republic or to remove government officials in their post using illegal means.
Okay, I remember kasi, and I'm going to refer to you, Ed, on this because I heard it on your show, Storycon. You were talking to the NBI director. Ang sinabi ni NBI director hindi siya inciting. Kailangan may kaakibat na aksyon. Yun ba yung sinasabi ninyong rise up tumultuously in layman's terms? Kumbaga dapat.
Yes. The call should be to rise up tumultuously. The call to resign does not involve any violence. So it's not sedition. It's not inciting to sedition.
Tumultuously is chaotically, di ba? Magulo.
Can we give an example na lang, attorney, para maintindihan talaga namin and we're not mincing words
yes, sir,
anymore?
Kasi English yun eh.
Well, for example, if the speech is for calling on the armed forces to stage a violent overthrow of government or to a mob and say, lusubin natin ang Malacanang, sunugin natin yan hanggat hindi mapatalsik yung mga nakatira diyan. Yan, mga ganyan, inciting to sedition. O kaya pigilan natin ang gobyerno, sabotahin natin ang gobyerno. So it's a public call for those kinds of illegal and usually violent means. That is what makes it inciting to sedition. The other thing also is the person calling for it, there should be a semblance of capacity. Hindi naman, for example, isang musmus na bata magsasabi niyan, wala namang niwala. So dapat meron ding connection dun sa crowd o dun sa addressing ng kanyang panawagan.
Sir, pasingit lang ha. Pero sir, paano if it's a call for a withdrawal of support by the military, which has been bandied around a lot, withdrawal support versus the typical coup d'etat, which is penalized by a special law?
Well, that's yung terminology of withdrawal of support is yung palusot yan ng mga abogado so that it is in between coup d'etat and sedition. But I think if you involve the military, that would be more in the shade of a coup d'etat. So they're not totally safe there. When you ask the military to withdraw support so that somebody else will take over, which is the legal process, that's coup d'etat. As a matter of fact, asking people or inciting to a coup d'etat is also punished by that special law.
Kasi magkakaroon na ng mga rally and kailangan alam din namin yung karapatan namin and hanggang saan pwede itulak ito. So kunwari pumunta kami ni Pauline, meron lang kaming mga placards saying ganito, ganyan, resign, ganito, ganyan, resign. That's okay, right?
That's okay. That's okay. That's perfectly within your right.
Kailan magko-crossover, sir? Pag ano nakasulat sa placard?
Well, number one, as I said, it's not enough ilagay mo dyan, mag-alsa tayo mga kababayan. Unless, of course, meron kang following o merong makikinig sa'yo. But, if you're just one among so many at wala ka namang particular na ina-address at hopefully may impluensyahan, so baka hindi pa rin yan yung citing to sedition.
Okay, so may capacity.
Take everything into context kasi because these are offenses against the security of the state. So there should also be a reasonable possibility na baka nga gagawin at manganganib ang Republika o kaya ang ating gobyerno o kaya ang ating Estado.
So for example, yung nagyari dun sa UPI, they were retired generals, nagawa sila nung call, pero wala naman silang action, kumbaga, na parang, tara, punta na tayo sa Malacanang. It's still within their freedom of speech, which is protected by the Bill of Rights. Even though in their capacity as retired generals, I suppose they, of course, mas may influence, mas may weight compared to kaming dalawa here, kaming tatlo here. Would that be correct, Attorney?
Yeah, you make a good point. Of course, when you're talking to the armed forces or to the law enforcement agencies or the security agencies, you become more credible or more capable, or it's more possible if you come from their ranks. And, you're no less than a general. But maingat din sila sa kanilang pananalita. Wala naman silang tiyahang panawagan na, ipabagsakin natin ng gobyerno, palitan yung, hindi, resign ang sinasabi nila. So maingat, alam nila ito, kaya maingat din sila.
Okay, we're just asking because na-cancel yung day 3 nila. Hindi sila nabigyan ng permit because of supposedly seditious statements that were made. But I think, yeah.
Baka makancel ang pension din eh. Malaking bagay rin yun. Malaking bagay rin yun.
Aray, masakit yun.
All right, Attorney, but as promised, we have lots of questions for you. Perhaps the biggest headline today was that arrest warrants have finally been issued against Zaldico and 17 others. But what's next? What mechanisms are there for the government to bring Zaldico back home?
Well, all the law enforcement agencies of government will be compelled to execute that warrant or to serve that warrant. But we all know he's abroad and hiding. So most probably, the Republic of the Philippines and our law enforcement agencies will request the Interpol to assist them in serving the warrant. They will also alert our consular officials so that they can make representations in the countries where he is suspected to be to help give information and help in the arrest. Maaari naman gawin yan. At dapat yan ang ginagawa nila.
From the beginning, this was what the first step that they were asking for, di ba? Wala pa nga arrest warrant, paano natin siya papauwiin?
The trigger.
The trigger. So, simula dito, since meron ng arrest warrant, does it follow, Attorney Egon, na pwede nang pakansela yung passport, pwede nang sumulat sa Interpol at humingi ng tulong nila?
Well, iba yung warrant of arrest. Hindi naman yan requirement for the cancellation of passport. The prosecution has to file a motion with the court because it will be the court that will give the orders. So, ika-cancel yung passport. Once the passport is cancelled, to undocumented alien siya. So, even under the internal rules of any country where he is found, ang kanilang duty is to deport. And most national laws naman would say that if a foreigner is undocumented, he is deported back to his home country. That will, mas mabilis din yan. No? Dapat ginagawa yan sabay-sabay. Meron pa yung hindi pa natin nakikita is the prosecution requesting for preliminary remedies under the rules of the Sandigan Bayan para ma-attach na yung mga kayamanan nila, ari-arian nila na maaring managot in case they are adjudged guilty by the court. Hindi pa natin nakikita yan. Pwede yan eh. Kasi importante yan kasi baka na naman may spirit away, may tago o may transfer ang kanilang mga assets na pwedeng panggagalingan ng pagpalit o kaya pagsoli nung ninakaw nila.
But here's the thing, Attorney, no? You have ex-Congressman Zaldico refusing to come back home because of threats, alleged threats to his life. And last night we spoke to his legal counsel, Attorney Rondain, and he said there are possibly two conditions that would make him come back. And that one is petition to bail, to post bail, and second is house arrest. Are these fair asks, and should the courts even consider those petitions of the accused?
But unfortunately for Mr. Ko, the excuse of you have death threats or you face security risk or is not enough ground to defy a warrant of arrest or to be a fugitive from justice. You leave that to the law enforcement agencies. And the second point, house arrest, they may request for that. It's not a right. And considering the circumstances, it will be very difficult for the court and the defense to justify a house arrest. Kasi, that will be yung parang unequal protection of the laws. Dahil congressman ba siya? Dahil ba mayaman siya? Kaya house arrest. What's the basis for the house arrest? So I think they will attempt to do that. As a matter of fact, I suspect they will try to delay everything by questioning all kinds of technicalities. And that's why it's important for you, the media, and us, the Filipino people, to watch the judiciary. Because the ball is now in the hands of the judiciary. And unfortunately, over the past so many years, the judiciary has become a problem, part of the problem in this graft and corruption. Ang daming nakalusot sa judiciary dito sa mga malalaking kaso na nakaraan. So I don't know. I hope they do better this time. It is good that they issued the warrant of arrest quite, very quickly compared to the past.
That was quite fast.
Attorney, last question. What if, we're not sure, but what if my second citizenship sees Zaldico? Will that totally negate this whole cancellation of passport thing? Or will the Interpol help be enough to compel him to come back?
Yeah, the Interpol will still do that, regardless of whether or not we have an extradition treaty with the country where he is in, or whether or not he has a dual citizenship. Meron pa ring treaty obligation ang Interpol to help our local enforcement agencies, especially so that a warrant of arrest has been duly issued after due process by a competent court in our jurisdiction.
Sir, sorry, last question. Pahabol na lang. Okay. I haven't read the charge sheet, pero I understand that the charges against Zaldico involve malversation and violation of the anti-graft law. What exactly are we looking for in terms of what the prosecution has to prove? I asked that kasi batuhan kalawat kanan eh. Tumanggap na ng pera yung isa, ganito raw kalaki yung binibigay, and so on down the line. So far, it's a lot of testimonial evidence, plus perhaps photos of maletas. And we don't even know what's inside. So in the end, what are we looking at and what are we looking for? Anong tatayo sa korte? The same goes with whatever charges they might file against Martin Romualdez. What are we looking for and what do they intend to file?
Well, in the case of Zaldico, it is very important, Ed, to explain and clarify that the charge only pertains to only one case, one project, where I think his company was involved.
Sunwest,
so,
opo.
Ghost project, unfinished project. So the evidence is practically intact.
Okay.
May nabayaran mo, di naman natapos. This is not the huge, grand conspiracy of so many government officials and politicians and contractors stealing from us budget pa lang ninanakaw na nila. Hindi pa pinag-uusapan yung project. Itong
Yes, sir.
unang kaso kay Congressman ko, former Congressman ko, is only with respect to one project. So, the elements of either graft and corruption, malversation, are pretty simple, revised penal code. Unlike plunder, where simple lang yung batas, pero pagdating sa judiciary in the past, ang daming mga dinagdag na mga requirements sa halos hindi ka na makakonvict ng plunder. Kasi nga, big time mandarambong mga ito eh. So they had all the money to influence everybody else. So maganda, I think it is a good tactic for DOJ or for DPWH or the Ombudsman to choose the simpler cases na kompleto na, kumbaga airtight yung kanilang ebidensya. So we should not worry. We should welcome this. Anyway, there are so many hundreds or thousands of projects where mga ito sangkot din eh. Not to mention the grand conspiracy of insertion. So maganda na meron ng warrant of arrest sa isa, napakarami pa namang ibang parating. Yun din, as they develop and get more people to squeal, to save their necks, edi maganda. But this is a good start. This is a good start.
You might call it a low-hanging fruit, but the complicating factor, I suppose, is Zaldico's claim that he divested as early as 2019 from SunWest.
Yes, they all do that. But
yes, sir, they do.
There's a concept in law, yung piercing the corporate veil. So
Yes,
you
sir.
cannot use the juridical personality of a corporation to shield your wrongdoing or your fraud, no? If they can show that even if you divested, you were still in control, or you just gave it to members of your family, pero ikaw pa rin ang nag-iimpluwensya, then that will be set aside. So, and then the courts and prosecution has done that in many other cases. I hope this time, pakikinggan ng court yan. I hope this time, that's why it's very important that they should start freezing or attaching the assets of Mr. Ko. Otherwise, you know, logic would say, survival would say, he'll use all of this stolen money to influence everybody else.
Yes, sir. I really need to stop asking questions. I'm being threatened already. Attorney Egon Keosa, maraming salamat for joining us tonight.
Okay, we're just going to pause for another breather, but after that, controversy becomes this year's Miss Universe as results of the pageant raised lots of eyebrows. That and more stories still ahead. Keep it here on One News.
You're still watching the big story on One News. We'll circle back to our top story. The ICI and the Public Works Department recommending charges against former Speaker Martin Romualdez and his ex-Appropriations Committee Chairman Zaldico. At the Strat-based forum today, Ombudsman Remulla and Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon discussed these further. They also talk about lessons learned and ways moving forward as the flood control scandal still unfolds. Mobile journalist Merimon Reyes reports.
It was President Bongbong Marcos' turn to cause a stir through a video posted to social media when he name-dropped his cousin, former Speaker Martin Romualdez, and suggested cases might be filed against him in relation to the flood control investigation. But at a forum organized by the Strat-based Institute on the same day, Ombudsman Remulla says he still has to review the evidence submitted by the DPWH and ICI to determine if there's a case there.
We just have to be patient with the process because we cannot violate rights to people. But there will be other tools that we'll be using that will make us exact accountability better. When we maximize what can be harnessed from the powers given to us by the Ombudsman Law of 1989.
At the same forum, DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon said they are recommending charges of plunder, graft, or direct bribery based on Romualdez's working relationship with Zaldico.
These are the possible crimes of plunder, violation of the Graft Corrupt Practices Act, and direct bribery. The links are, nung naging speaker, former Speaker Martin Romualdez, ang naging Committee on Appropriations head ay si Congressman Zaldico.
But Remulla acknowledges plunder is a notoriously difficult charge to prosecute.
Because no one ever gets convicted of plunder. And some of these theories are just insane. When you look at the jurisprudence, some of them are just insane. Some of them, you cannot live with it.
Both the Department of Public Works and Highways and the Office of the Ombudsman are now fast-tracking reforms to ensure the same delaying tactics used in corruption cases in the past do not succeed this time. Dizon reported that 3 months since President Bongbong Marcos' fourth State of the Nation address, nearly 70 cases are already sitting before the Office of the Ombudsman, as well as 10 referral cases to the Philippine Competition Commission on bid rigging, where they're also requesting the revocation of licenses, as well as over 30 immigration lookout bulletin orders against personalities and officials involved in the scandal. Bringing down the overpriced cost of materials by up to 50% is also one of the DPWH's biggest reform to date, something which Dizon said will save the 2026 national budget 60 billion pesos.
Finally, telling the public why is government spending up to 30, 40, 50% more than the private sector when building a road, building a classroom, building a hospital. It doesn't make sense. It's the same cement. It's the same rebar.
Right.
So, but now we've done it. And we can't go back. We can't. That cannot, no one in his right mind is going to bring back those prices up to these levels, to the levels that we saw.
As for the Office of the Ombudsman, it has modernized its fact-finding efforts by using data analytics, digitized records, forensics, and artificial intelligence. It has also signed a memorandum of agreement with the Anti-Red Tape Authority to strengthen the ease of doing business. More importantly, Remulla says he is talking to the Supreme Court to ensure they set rules that will allow for continuous trials, meaning once trial starts, hearings will be held in close succession to make sure there are no inordinate delays.
Cases are moving. We have already filed the first batch of flood control cases before the Tindig Pilipinas. More cases are coming, and we are working with the court for continuous trials. No delays, no unnecessary recess.
He also says that restitution is one of the conditions they have set before becoming a state witness to ensure none will be kept safe in the arms of those guilty to the crime. Remulla says it will take a whole of government commitment to reform to make it work, but it won't come easy, and already his family is paying a steep price.
I think that it's fair. But if we are transparent as a constitutional commission, we can ask the executive to be transparent. We should be able to ask the judiciary to be transparent. It's not going to be easy for us. Actually, some people are not talking to my children anymore. It's true, it's true. This has really burned some bridges all across. Many of our friends or political allies before stopped talking to my children because of what I do. And it just has to happen.
Kapatid Mobile Journal, Mary Monreyes, we are One News.
Former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque's passport will be canceled anytime soon. Senate Finance Committee Chair Win Gatchalian said this as his committee deliberated the Department of Justice's budget for 2026. He said Roque's return to the Philippines will be crucial so that the qualified trafficking case against him will prosper. The case stems from Roque's alleged connection to a POGO hub raided in Porac, Pampanga back in 2024, although Roque himself had repeatedly denied this. The DOJ said Roque tried to request for political asylum from the Netherlands, but it was not granted. In a statement, Roque reiterated that he never organized, directed, assisted, or participated in any act of human trafficking. He also denied involvement in the corporation or operations of the Porac POGO. He said his only connection to the firm came after the 2022 elections, when he handled an ejectment case or evictment case and negotiations for arrears with PAGCOR. Roque also said the business was legal and licensed at that time and was only shut down when it no longer had a license.
Okay, and now on a much lighter note, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas in Baguio City. That's as the John Hay Hotels kick off its magical Cirque Christmas lighting ceremony. And for an update, we have mobile journalist Arles de los Santos joining us live on the ground. Hi Arles, what's happening over there?
Pauline, 34 days na lamang ay Pasko na. Kaya naman dahan-dahan nang napupuno ng mga palamuti at liwanag ang bawat sulok ng bansa. Gaya dito sa John Hay Hotels na kung saan pinailawan na nila ang kanilang mga Christmas tree. Mula sa mga Christmas tree hanggang sa iba't ibang makukulay at kumukuti-kutitap na palamuti, ramdam na talaga ang Christmas feels dito sa John Hay Hotels. May temang A Magical Cirque Christmas ang dekorasyon dito. Pero bukod sa makukulay na dekorasyon, may enjoy rin ng mga turista ang napakalamig na hangin dito. Para naman sa mga pamilyang magbabakasyon dito sa Baguio City, pwede nyo rin bisitahin ang Christmas Village sa Garden Wing ng hotel. Perfect yan para sa mga picture for the gram. May nakakabighaning light shows at circus show din dito. Kaya kung chill naman na hangout ang hanap mo, swak na swak dyan ang outdoor movie nights at bonfire dito sa hotel. Sa Forest Wing naman, sa kabilang bahagi, matutunghayan ang holiday harmonies at acoustic nights. Pwede rin makipag-interact sa Elves ni Santa. At syempre, hindi mawawala ang tradisyon ng Misa de Gallo at Misa de Año Nuevo. Ayon kay Land to Lifestyle Venture President and CEO Erickson Manzano, simula na rin ito ng pagkinang ng Baguio, hindi lamang bilang summer capital of the Philippines, kundi bilang Christmas capital ng bansa. Pauline, totoo nga na it's starting or beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Kaya naman, sa ating mga kapatid na naghahanap ng Christmas destination para sa paparating na holiday, bukas na ito. Mula ngayong gabi hanggang sa January 15, 2026. Ulit.
Ayan, napakaganda. Thank you so much, Arles, for that report. That was mobile journalist Arles de los Santos reporting live from Baguio City. Right, now before we go, Miss Universe Philippines 2025, Atisa Manalo ended her run with a third runner-up finish at the 74th Miss Universe pageant. Her placement breaks the Philippines' top 5 drought, last reached by Beatriz Gomez in 2021. Ultimately, Mexico's Fatima Bosch took home the crown. Manalo stood out in a crisp white swimsuit and a sleek silver gown during coronation night in Bangkok. And in the final Q&A, she highlighted her advocacy to empower young girls. So for our big picture tonight, we have pageant fans feeling heartbroken over the results. Miss Universe 2018 Catriona Gray questioned the relevance of this year's Q&A after the outcome drew mixed reactions from netizens and celebrities. Gray took to her own Instagram broadcast channel right after the winner's announcement, saying, but also, wala na bang bearing ang Q&A sa MU? Pageant expert Norman Tino, meanwhile, echoed the sentiment, saying Manalo and Miss Ivory Coast had stronger answers. He also hinted that the presence of a Mexican judge and a Mexican Miss Universe president may have influenced the results. Okay, but still congratulations to Atisa for
she looked
finishing
really
third
beautiful.
runner-up.
Parang Pilipinas, eleksyon. Walang natatalo.
Nadadaya lang.
Ayun. And that will have to do it for us this week here on The Big Story. Thank you so much for watching.